so random, but this is not the same day I filmed my last video. An entire week has gone by. It just happens to be another rainy day in Virginia, and then this is a thing that happens all the time now, so we'll have to wait and see if she stays up here for the entire video. So it's a different day. It's also a very different topic than anything I have ever talked about on my channel before, and I want to discuss money. Right at the end of my June favorites video, I mentioned in passing I had started reading a book called You Need a Budget by Mecham. Not only does he have the book, but he also has an app, and it's a budgeting app, and I started it on June 1st. I'm not being dramatic, which I am dramatic and I can be dramatic, but I'm really not when I say that this has completely changed my life. I feel so much better about money than I ever have as an adult. And Jeremy and I were talking about it over the phone last night, and he was like, this has been the scariest but also most amazing thing ever, me taking a more active role. When I get into something, I just really get into it, and I've had a lot of loving eye rolls from family members over the past couple months because I just want to talk about it all the time, and I'm just so surprised by all the stuff that I didn't learn or maybe wasn't paying attention to. So I really have broadened my horizons. This is not going to be a review of the technical parts of the budgeting app. I'm not the person for that. This is going to be more the mindset and the principles and things I've taken away. So I'm not sure how many people are going to watch this, but even if one person get something of value, it'll be well worth the time it takes me to sit and film this quick video. I did make some notes because I don't normally do these chatty videos, so I feel like I could get very rambly very quickly, but I do want to give just a little bit of background. The first thing is that I had an incredibly limiting belief about myself, probably since high school, and that is I'm bad at money. And I thought people were either just born good at it or bad at it, and you couldn't do much about it. And that was always me and Jared's joke, is that I was the spender, he's the saver, and we balance each other out. And if your family is anything like mine, we have about 5 stories that we love to trot out when we need a good laugh. And one of them involves me trying to make a purchase at a store in Tyson's Mall, my card being declined, and me not understanding, like, what do you mean? Run it again. Like, what do you mean there's not money in my account? There's always money there. Doesn't money grow on trees? So it was just clueless, and I just wish that I could, what I know now, I just wish I could tell 20-year-old me. And I mean, this was before I made videos, and it feels like, I guess it was a long time ago, but it also wasn't that long ago because I can remember it so vividly. But right at the beginning of our marriage, we went through a really bad financial time. And that's the thing, even if things feel great, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, the loss of that job, it is shocking at how quickly things fall apart. And I think in my early 20s, I thought that job loss was something that happened to middle-aged dads on sitcoms, not something that happened to us. And I remember things being so bad, like not being able, I think it was our air conditioner had gone out. It was original to this house. It was just time to replace it, but we couldn't afford it. And we didn't want to ask parents, and we didn't want to put it on a credit card, so we just decided to tough it out in the heat and humidity at like peak time of summer in Virginia. And I remember laying on the floor in our bedroom, and Jared brought in a fan, and I just was crying. I was so hot, and I felt like I would never be able to fall asleep because I was so hot. And the emotions, it's not, even though I do hate to be hot, it's not about that. Financial stress can just suck the joy out of your life. And I wish I could just tell the younger version of me, learn it now. And that is the biggest takeaway. If you feel overwhelmed, if you have searched for this video and you feel overwhelmed like I did, it can be a learned behavior. You can learn to be good at money. And over the past couple months, I've just tried to absorb everything. Books and podcasts about budgeting and investing, and I already, just with these few minor changes in my life, I already feel so much more empowered. So I think that is such a huge kind of liberating thing to realize, is that being good at money can be a learned behavior. So that is my first main takeaway. And then my second one is that budgeting doesn't have to be this excruciating task, this very restrictive thing. It's actually the exact opposite. It is prioritizing, it's giving every dollar a job, telling it where to go, and then designing the life you want to live. So I am gonna go get a glass of water, and I will be right back, and then we'll get into the real heart of this video. So why is YNAB working for me when other things haven't? We've tried a lot of the big budgeting apps. We tried our local bank's app, and then spreadsheets, and we always went back to spreadsheets. Like I mentioned, I put a lot of this because I didn't want to deal with money, didn't want to think about it. A lot of this fell to Jared, and I think that's where he felt the most comfortable. With him traveling, he wasn't around to update the spreadsheet, so I was having to do it and I hated it. And I said, this isn't fun. I think it would be a lot more enjoyable if I had an actual budgeting app on my phone. So I went and read a million reviews and I found a post on A Cup of Joe about YNAB, and I said, this sounds interesting. And that's kind of what led me to read the book first. And I'm so glad that I read the book first. And I think even if you're a seasoned YNAB user, if you don't have those 4 rules memorized, like if they haven't been drilled into your head, I think the book is worth your time. I read it, and then I also bought the audiobook version and listened to it again, and Jared just finished reading it and he really enjoyed it too. So there are 4 rules, and I think this is like, you can use whatever budgeting app that you want, but I think if you get these 4 rules and just like embrace them really and truthfully, I think that they can make any budgeting app or any spreadsheet that much better. So the first is to give every dollar a job. Pre-YNAB budgeting meetings would go something like this. We would sit down, we would forecast what we were expecting to earn that month, and then we would go down line by line, either what we thought we were going to spend or what we wanted to spend. And we would fill it all out. It would take forever and I would be really bored by the end, and then we would just go out and live our life. And then 30 some days would go by, and when we would come back and track it, it would be like, oh, well, bummer, I overspent that category, or oh, I guess I did pretty good here. But I don't think anything that we were doing all that time wasn't really moving us in the right direction, and it wasn't changing my actual behavior. So with YNAB, you don't project what you're gonna make that month, which I think is the biggest thing. This was the biggest hurdle, at least for myself. I had to wrap my mind around. Instead, you take whatever you have in your bank account at that exact moment, and you can start any day of the month. It doesn't need to be the first. So if you only have $500 in your account and yet your expenses are $1,000, what are you supposed to do? This was the big thing. And you take that $500 and you say to yourself, what do I need that money to do before I get paid next? So that makes you prioritize all your bills. Like, well, this one is due right now, so I need to use some of that $500, but this one's not due until I get paid next. So this is the only part of YNAB I found, at least for myself, was a little confusing. So I will link down below to a couple videos that I think explained it really well. I actually think, now that I think about it, I mean, we have very, 9 to 5 jobs, so we're getting paid the same. But if you are a freelancer, or maybe you stay at home with your children and you work sometimes but not all the time, you have some side hustles, like that kind of stuff, I think YNAB is incredible for, because you can really take what you currently have. You're not having to worry about, well, I don't have a normal job, so how am I supposed to use a budgeting app? This one is fantastic for everybody. Not only are you going through and giving your expenses, those dollars, a job, you're also giving your savings accounts jobs. And this was huge for me, because Jared would always save, but I never could get really excited about it because it would just be this pool of money. But when you start putting actual things, vacation fund, new floors that I have wanted forever, or finally replacing the sliding glass door out to the back, those kind of things, when I can see it actually in the app and see how many dollars we currently have in that account, that gets me excited. So if you, like me, just don't like an arbitrary savings because that's the responsible thing to do, but actually saving for something, that's where I get excited. Rule number 2 is to embrace your true expenses. So these are bigger items like personal property tax, Christmas, auto insurance. You know these bills are coming, but you're not thinking about them every single month. Or it's things where you don't know when they're gonna come, but you know they're gonna come at some point. A car is gonna break down, you're gonna have to replace an appliance in your home. What I think is hilarious about this whole thing is that since I've been really invested in all of this, I have had an unexpected roof issue that was $1 bajillion. Our washing machine broke down, and the air conditioner in Jared's car went kaput. And yes, it was terrible, but it was also so freeing to know that, when I sat down to budget that first time, I actually looked up how much it costs to maintain a townhouse of our square footage, and I had set aside that money. So when I went to Best Buy to buy the new washing machine, I was able to just pull that money. It was already allocated. So to be able to think about these bigger bills or purchases, so let's take Christmas for example. If you're budgeting $50 a month, when you get to December, it's so much fun. It's fun to think about everybody and to go shopping and not to have that stress of having to put presents on credit cards. So I think embracing your true expenses really makes this whole thing work, and just makes you feel more on top of your budget. I love rule number 3, and it is to roll with the punches. And this keeps me in my budget all the time. I'm in there every single day monitoring things. It's not like it was before where I would just set it, forget it, live my life for 30 days and then come back and say what went so terribly wrong. So let's take the air conditioner in the car as an example. I did not have enough in that car repair line item when that bill came to my door. So what I had to do, YNAB kind of freaks out and it's like, hey, you overspent this category. It is bright red. It notifies you at the top of the screen. Something is wrong. You need to fix it. And you need to fix it by taking money from different categories to cover that overspending. So what I did is that I took some money from our emergency fund and pulled it, and then I took some money from, let's say, clothing. And so once I had moved money from both of those line items, it covered it, it brought it back into the green, and then YNAB was happy again. And then the next month I just replenished the emergency fund, and so it keeps things running smoothly. And that's not a failure, it's actually the exact opposite. That is just life. Cars are gonna have issues. It's unfortunate, but it just is what it is. So it's being able to roll with the punches that keeps you from sliding backwards or going into debt. Rule number 4 is to age your money, and this is what I think is the magic. You want to get to a point where you are living off of the money you made last month, and this is when you get that peace of mind where you're able to set all of your bills to auto pay. You're never having that stress about having to time a bill to a paycheck. And this is what I wish I could have told myself 10 years ago. And then even 10 years ago, when you're that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle and you start making a little bit more money, but then you start spending a little bit more money. So the second, a job loss would happen again, you're back in that same terrible position where you're crying in the bedroom because you don't have enough money to fix your air conditioner. So you're not really that much better off, even though you're making more money. You have got to break that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, and you do that by aging your money. And so that's what I really want to work on next, is just increasing our savings rate so that age of money also increases. So even though I just gave you the 4 rules, Jesse Mecham goes so much further into detail in the book. So that's my first resource I would recommend to you, is the You Need a Budget book. I think it was fantastic, and I'm so glad I read the book before I started actually using the app. And the app, I'll have to double check, I think it's $80 some for the year to use the app. They do have a student program, so since Jared's currently taking classes, it was so easy to just forward them my last receipt from his school, and then it was completely free. So you get a whole year free if you are taking any kind of classes, which I think is awesome. So the You Need a Budget book, and then also the ChooseFI, and FI stands for Financial Independence podcast, is incredible. It has 2 hosts. They're actually 2 guys that are in Richmond, Virginia. And one, Brad, he's like super into all things money. He's very frugal. And then Jonathan's also into money, but he is spendy McGee. So I feel like I kind of always resonate a little bit more with Jonathan, but they do an incredible job. And I have learned so much from these guys and the people that they have on their podcast. And one person that they had on, JL Collins, or Jim Collins, and he has a stock series on his website, and I thought that was so interesting. I ended up reading his book, and I'm currently about halfway through. It's The Simple Path to Wealth. That one I think is incredible, and also the John Bogle, and I think that one, hold on, I think it's in my notes. Yeah, so the John Bogle one is called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, and then the next book I have on my list to read is Your Money or Your Life. And I'm not sure who wrote that, but I will have it linked down below. So let me just look over my notes really quick. Okay, one thing I wrote down is that if you're thinking about doing the YNAB program specifically, you have to take the courses. I think those were so much help, so I will have a link to those down below, but they are definitely, I think they were like 20 or 30 minutes long. You get to ask your own questions, so I think those were a huge help. And then the other thing, so during the bad time in our financial, I'm so grateful for our parents, and that would have just been a whole other thing, and I probably would still be worried about that if we hadn't have had them helping out. The other thing that helped us was the Dave Ramsey plan, and we did the debt snowball. We paid off the credit card, and then we closed it down. And then for all these years, so all these 7+ years, I've been very anti-credit card. Well, I don't believe in them. Dave Ramsey says not to believe in them. But when I started listening to the ChooseFI podcast, travel hacking has just opened my mind up to all kinds of things. And I would never have felt comfortable enough opening up credit cards for the travel hacking without YNAB, because they let you use a credit card in the program almost like it's a debit card. And let me see if I can explain this. So After I finish filming, I'm gonna go to the grocery store, and let's say I spend $80 and I use my credit card to pay it. When I get back into my car and I put the transaction into YNAB, I tell it that I've used my credit card for this. So it goes ahead and it pulls $80, whatever I spent at the grocery store, out of my grocery fund, and it automatically brings that $80 up into what I owe for my next credit card payment. So I'm still looking, I'm not looking at what my credit limit is or how much money at the bank. I'm still always looking at my budget. This is how much I've said that I can spend on groceries, so I'm trying to stay in it. So hopefully that made sense. If not, one of those web series is dedicated to credit cards, and I found it incredibly helpful. So just to summarize, I feel very excited about learning more about money and just taking more action. I love that budgeting is an exciting thing now. It's not a restrictive feeling, and it makes shopping, like I never have guilt about shopping anymore. I have a plan and I stick to it, and if something comes up, I roll with the punches, and it also takes away the drudgery from savings. Suddenly savings becomes this really exciting thing to add value to our lives, to make sure that we're saving for retirement, to just design the life we want to live. So hopefully this video was not all over the place and that you got a little bit from it. I would love to know what kind of budgeting tools that you use or any books that you recommend. So let's start a discussion down below. But thank you again so much for spending time with me today, and I'll talk to you again very soon.